being that we've already had a couple of derechos this year, I want to talk about derechos because there's always a lot of conflict between derechos, all because of the derecho that happened in 2020 that went through portion of the Corn Belt. Derechos have a different criteria than they used to now. It used to be only about 240 miles or 250 miles of severe wind gusts. Now it is 400 miles or greater of severe wind gusts, which is 58 miles an hour or higher. But you also need isolated wind gusts about 74 miles an hour or greater, which is hurricane force strength. Now you do. We already had one or two of them this year. We just had a derecho earlier this week in portions of the Corn Belt that moved through Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. And looking at a standpoint, I guess, of how often they happen. A derecho happens every single year in the Corn Belt. It really does. This is also outdated by years, so honestly, when they update this, I think that they will update this to maybe one or two a year because over the last several years, we've had more than one ratio per year in the Corn Belt. But a ratio has been around for over 100 years now. You know, so just because the duration in 2020 that happened, it's like some people thinks that a duration never happened before then. But there's been several pretty intense, nasty durations that happened in the 2010s even, but that happened further south than the Corn Belt region. So there's been several derechos that has produced 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts or greater, just like what we had earlier this week. South side of Chicago had wind gusts of around 100 miles an hour or maybe slightly greater as well. So again, they are intense clusters of thunderstorms that usually will thrive along a sharp gradient of moisture in storm field. They've done that for the last several years, and they will likely continue to do that. Model guidance does always struggles on showing predicting the placement and the evolution of these complexes of thunderstorms. Now you technically can't say it will be a derecho before the event happens, but when you have such good model agreement and good, you know, a very favorable I guess setup for a derecho, you tend to really know before the derecho happens that this will likely be a derecho. And I've said that multiple times, and most of the times they have verified as a derecho, or if not, they still at least produce intense damaging wind gusts. So, but again, you can have a weaker derecho that only produce about 60 to 75 mile an hour wind gusts as well. You don't need a derecho to produce 100 mile an hour, 120 mile an hour wind gusts. With a derecho, you will get some very gnarly shove clouds. This thing could it's something called a gust front on the edge of the complex. It is a gust front. That is what will bring the intense wind gusts, or at least the damaging wind gusts. And obviously behind it, you can also get continued damaging wind gusts. But the most intense wind gusts will be right behind the shove cloud, right behind the gust front, and that is when you have a lot of rain cooled air as well. That is why it gets much cooler as the complex gets close to you because there's a lot of rain cooled air, outflowing winds that will push down, and then these derechos often move very fast. When you have very fast moving derechos upwards of 50 to 60 to 70 miles an hour, you will also get all of them winds aloft to make it down to the surface and easily get 70 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts. So there's multiple things that comes together to get these very intense wind gusts. But you will also have heavy rain with these things, and you can also get tornadoes on the edge of the derechos. On the edge of the squall line, that's where you can get some like embedded circulations on that can produce obviously tornadoes, usually weak, but they are very fast tornadoes, fast moving tornadoes as well. They happen very quickly. To be classified as a derecho, the Storm Prediction Center will classify that as a derecho by looking at all the wind reports. Now this is a look at a derecho that happened about 14 years ago, and that for the east and the Midwest. But either way, it began in Iowa area and then dived southeast through several more states. This had a huge swath of damaging winds and a couple of tornadoes as well. So it is classified by the Storm Prediction Center on if it is a derecho or not, because they're the ones that makes the criteria up anyways. But it is pretty simple to classify derecho before the event is even over. Once you get that full boat out line segment, I mean, you can often tell that this thing will be lasting for hundreds of miles, and that will produce pretty intense damaging wind gusts. Because in the Boeing futures, the derechos, that is where you get them 100 to 130 mile an hour wind gusts. Obviously very isolated corridors, but they do happen. And derechos are also full of straight line winds, which doesn't help either. I mean, you always have winds, straight from the west. You always have a amount of gusts straight from the west. So after that first gust or two weighs down a tree or anything, more of them very strong gusts will obviously tip over them trees or cause more damage because you have the consistent straight line of winds that moves through rather than having different directions of winds. If that also makes sense, it's not like a tornado or anything. It's straight line winds are just as bad as a lot of low end tornadoes as well.